Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm sorry, I hope you allow me to speak from the rostrum. I'm an old academic, so I'm used only to the rostrum rather than a Steve Jobs style presentation. I just want to correct the MC about MIER. It is a Malaysian Institute of Economic Research, not Investment Economic Research. The topic I was given is to talk a bit about the impact of 5G on economic growth prospects and also some of the social-political implications, which is going to be massive. It is if it is fully implemented, 5G is capable of transforming societies. It is already doing that with 4G, but with 5G, even more. Lives will be overturned, the way we work, the way we learn, the way we look after ourselves, the way we relate to each other, all will change. I'm here to focus only on the issue of economic growth. I would like to thank MCMC for this opportunity to be here. Fortunately, we were commissioned by MCMC to undertake impact of a national rollout of 5G on the economy last quarter, which we completed and presented and had been received. It is a preliminary study. We have started a conversation within our policy circles as well as academic and policy researchers on these larger issues of 5G, probably of the 7 technologies which we have identified as critical to our future economic growth through reindustrializing Malaysia's Vision 2030. 5G is the one, probably the key issue. If you look at this diagram, it captures the essence of our problem from an economic point of view. We had, when Vision 2020 was launched in 1992 by the Prime Minister number 4, who is now the 7th Prime Minister, Tun Mahathir, we were supposed to achieve this year developed status by 2020, and that the first 10 years of that period, in fact, the first from 88 to like 98 during the Asian financial crisis, we were growing at a rapid clip of 9% average over that 10 years. And the GDP tripled, GDP per capita doubled and grew again 1.5 times. And so we were speeding along, and there was almost a sense of inevitability about economic growth. But of course, the Asian financial crisis put a stop to that process. And it is since then we have been trending down in terms of the growth potential, economic growth potential of the economy, from about 8% to about 5%, and now below 5% over the last since the year 2000. And we have never fully recovered. So the challenge for us is how to then achieve the growth path that will lead us to develop status by now extended by another 5 to 10 years to develop status by 2030 and get out of the present middle income trap. Economists call them as middle income trap, meaning that you're not able to get out of the current economic status through lack of technological absorption, innovation, and value-added activities, and now made worse by the debt overhang and, of course, the corruption that we are talking about. And therefore, we may not have, and government will not have enough in its fiscal space to then finance or fund some of that required investments. So there is a debate which I think has been resolved because we won. That is that the Vision 2030 projected that growth of 4.7%, which is, of 4.7% will be enough for us to achieve developed status by 2030. Our own calculation shows that, and there's some conflation of the issue of the deflator as well as whether the government is talking about real terms or nominal terms in terms of achieving that GDP per capita target, that in fact you will not be able to reach that target if you grow at 4.7, growing as you are doing now, investing in areas as you are doing now, even with some input from 5G. And that there could be further decline, and others who are competing with us in Vietnam, in Indonesia might catch up and reach the tape before we do. But so in our calculation, the rate should be around 7%. But how to grow from 5 to 7% over the next 5 to 10 years? It is a critical question of economic strategy, policies, institutional reform, as well as the right politics to enable for growth and businesses to thrive and populations to share the benefits of that growth. So the economic growth conundrum is how to achieve this. When I was asked to come back to MIER to set up a new cycle of research to support government and business in terms of this transformation to Vision 2030, we identified 7 key technologies that will be required for us to re-industrialize. Because since 2000, the GDP share of manufacturing has declined from something like 32% to about 20%. In terms of employment, much less. In terms of value added, roughly what I mentioned earlier. So in this context, we are to accelerate growth using a new industrial plan to encourage industry, innovations, entrepreneurs, transforming the SME sector from its crepe cosmetics kind of economy to much more engaged in technology and innovation and supplying through the internet, through the to the global market. Nobody now can produce just for a small area, the community, while in fact the market is out there, open to everyone. So how to get back to this potential growth path at a minimum of 7%? So we in MIER, and I got back in April last year after 33 years absence, to create a research program which we call the Crouching Tiger. And we set up 8 research groups and to cover different aspects of economic policy. But most important is to create an industrial research bureau, which is responsible for bringing together investors, inventors, innovators, small-scale operators, even academics, and R&D scientists, and so on together. Because over the years, and just when we opened for our shop, so to speak, recently, we have many feedback about from those who have made technological breakthroughs that could not penetrate the bureaucracy because the government is the last that you would expect to change. And these are innovators who cannot find the opportunity and potential in Malaysia, and they have left and thrived overseas. Many inventions, the pen drive, were Malaysian-based. Even companies like Google, Dyson, were looking to locate in Malaysia, but the bureaucracy was too slow and were haggling over property prices when in fact Singapore gave them free land and they established there. Now only there is a realization that if the government does not do anything, you are not going to be able to attract the kind of very dynamic factors that are affecting. industrialization and foreign investment. And we have, unfortunately, to continue to rely on foreign investment because our own national savings are insufficient. So we have identified 7 leapfrog technologies to transform the economy. Through a new reindustrialization, to raise back our industrialization or manufacturing to a level that we used to enjoy, and for which there is potential because of 5G. Of these 7 technologies, including the solid-state hydrogen, biojet fuel, agrodomes or smart farms and greenhouses, the electric car, and also in terms of the hyperspeed freight logistics transport, as well as in terms of in fintech, we could dub it the gold equity plan, and create a universal credit system to support borrowers, SMEs, and also households to receive a basic income to support livelihoods and so on, so to spread. So these 7 technologies, the last in fintech, covering cryptocurrencies or even blockchain technologies and so on, being now discussed. For us, of these 7 technologies, 5G is the most critical because it is the most pervasive, it is the most disruptive. And therefore, it bears monitoring how we roll out 5G, who are the players, and what kind of incentives are we going to provide, and regulatory frameworks to enable that we maximize the potential impact of 5G and minimize issues like security, issues about privacy, issues of what we call that social anomie and political distortions, post-truth kind of politics and so on. When I was MP in the year 1998, for the term ending 2000, our backbenchers proposed to set up at that time 4G was just about to come on stream in a big way, to just have a seminar on cyber politics. People parliamentarians just didn't know what cyber politics is all about. Now, there's nothing more vicious in politics than through social media and in determining political opinions and decisions. So we have established in the space of about 6 months, about 28 memorandum with different collaborators, either funders or investors who have come forward to look at us, or with facilitators, including DOSM, as well as MCMC. The MCMC was, in fact, the first of these collaborations, and we undertook that study in 3 months, which is only a first round study, which I would like to share with you on the impact of 5G on the impact of a national rollout of 5G on economic growth. There are many ways of studying this. We can do all 3 of them, but we chose because they wanted the task force wanted a quick and, I won't say dirty, but a quick result. We used the growth accounting method employed by the Australian government to study the impact of 5G on the national rollout. And of course, to do the impact forecasting forward to 2030 and 2050. The data and methodology were provided by the World Bank database, as well as the Department of Statistics for the period 85 to 18. We used the growth accounting approach, and we set up 3 investment scenarios: a low investment versus a baseline, low investment, medium, and high investment. The amounts are as shown, and the components are as reflected. We can do. We were supposed to do some verticals, but that only can be done in another approach, either using input-output or using computational general equilibrium models. But that is, in fact, the next stage. Just to quickly show you the results, there are those three cost scenarios, and show these are figures of contribution to growth of 5G investments and rollout on the baseline. And additional, if you take the last base case, 0.29 to 2050, or 0.11 additional for growth rate insofar as 5G is concerned. At the moment, and then of course the actual contribution to GDP per capita is also shown below among the three cost scenarios. Our projection is that over the next 20 to 2030, about 25 to 30,000 jobs will be created directly in this sector, in the telecommunications sector, in the digital economy, so to speak. And the digital economy at the moment, according to MDEC, is about 20% of GDP, will double to about 20% depending on the high growth scenario. So it is going to be a massive impact on growth. What we are concerned, of course, and as even ordinary citizens, is the implications of such a huge rollout and a transformative transformation of the economy through growth of the digital economy. I have part of our conversation, I've summarized in a few slides here. I don't think I have time to go through all of them, but basically we are concerned about, we are talking about how do you access, distribute, or of course you have to create economic surplus through 5G, which essentially is impact of increasing returns to scale in investment and output and production. That it is growing at just more than simple compounding, but in fact using n into n minus 1 divided by 2, the network power of connectivity. And that is an exponential growth, a geometrical growth, that will create the surpluses just as populations begin to decline or grow at only about 1% to 1.5%. Who captures that surplus? How do we ensure through institutions, through politics, through social and through communities, especially to achieve SDG goals, so that it is not then hijacked or distorted in terms of impact distribution? Right now, given what has been going on, the so-called trickling down process that were promoted by Reaganism, Thatcherism, the World Bank, IMF, since the year 1980, and that's about, 30 years, have been declared, even by IMF itself, to have failed. And that globally, in most countries, while poverty may have come down, the income inequality has, in fact, either stayed stagnant or increased. And wages, real wages, are either stagnant or falling. And that the middle class are squeezed, whereas poverty have appeared in different forms. This is not just in Malaysia, it's everywhere else. We had to revise recently, not just the issue of nutrition among children in flats, about the fact that poverty vulnerabilities are still, is not 0.4% as the government previously had mentioned, from the drop of 49% or 50% of households from 1970 to 0.4 in the year 2018. But it actually, in fact, was remeasured by the UN rapporteur as well as by Revlon from World Bank, that it is roughly between 16% to 20%. So we have a B20 poverty issue, although the target at the moment is on relative poverty, that is B40, and strategies are being oriented both through subsidies, rationalization of subsidies, and so on through that These are things that have to be monitored as we roll out the 5G, because the social impact, the social good created, can be overhyped by the fact that it's so very dramatic. And when you see the drones display last night, you are saying you are, forgivable to say that the future is very bright as that display that you saw last night. But there is another side to it. What Julian presented were the benefits, the issues that are associated with how to exploit this technology and how it affects production, consumption, lifestyles, health, and education. But there is another side that needs to be monitored, and this is even more difficult beyond technology as such. One of them is, of course, the issue of changing roles, the role of communities, the so-called third pillar, according to Ragan, of the World Bank, that we have to exploit the communities in terms of participating and therefore benefiting from the inputs from government as well as the business sector. And that it will be enabled by 5G connectivity and the digital transformation that we expect from that technology. In this case, even I recall there are new business models to talk about, new training modes, and so on, which I don't have to go into. So to round up, the one issue that, aside from the digital divide, which Accenture and others are still, I have estimated to be very, very very prevalent. I'm concerned about the impact of 5G and this digital transformation on employment, on mass employment. These structural changes can only be barely understood. You can look at it afterwards. We can discuss in the fire chat in a short while. But if you look at this, you can see the hollowing out of the middle routine types of jobs and the distribution of displacements of jobs. And society, governments must accommodate this transition, retraining as well as creating a social safety net in order to support the impact of this digital transformation. Just dwell on that diagram. And so there's going to be a massive retraining required, not only to enable people to make use of the new capabilities of communication and connectivity, but also to derive benefits in terms of both new jobs as well as incomes. So I will stop at that. In this case, again, another view of that whole thing. I'm glad teaching is not going to be replaced, at least. And in conclusion, then, the impact of 5G on growth, on output, on everything else that go from there is massive. Traditional relationships, including productivity gains, will have to be allocated or rationed in some way through either the market or some kind of state market mechanism. And therefore, the issues of integrity, security, sovereignty becomes very, very crucial, and independence and privacy. So thank you very much. Hopefully that helps you.